All right, hey guys, this is Ms. Davis here. This video will cover Unit 5, Scale 6, which is the Pythagorean Theorem. So the essential question for this lesson is what formula can be used to find the missing side of a right triangle? So you may have used this or learned this before, depending on what classes you've taken before. But basically, the Pythagorean theorem can be used to find the third side of a right triangle. So this kind of triangle has to have that 90-degree angle in it, and only be used on 90-degree angle right triangles. We're able to use the Pythagorean theorem, which is right here, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, where a and b represent the legs of the right triangle. So if we're looking at the diagram to the right, side A and side B are the two legs that make up that 90-degree angle. So they meet to form that 90-degree right angle over here. And then C represents the hypotenuse. So the hypotenuse is the long slanted side. I always say that the 90-degree angle box points to the hypotenuse. So it's the longest slanted side. And that's always your C. Okay, and that comes after the equal sign there. So we're going to go through a few examples where we're going to use the Pythagorean theorem when we're given two sides of a right triangle. So off to the side, I'm going to kind of make a little note. So use Pythagorean theorem, PT, if given two sides and need to find the third. Okay, so let's look at example number 1. So it says given right triangle ABC with AB is 8, so I'm going to label, AC is 8, BC is 6. Find the length of AB, so we're going to put an X there. So when I look at my right triangle, I have to know that I always find my C, my hypotenuse first. There's the 90-degree angle box. Right across from it is always your C, your hypotenuse. Okay, so X is going to be your C, and then these other two sides that make up your 90-degree angle are going to be A and B. So I always start by writing out the formula. So A squared plus B squared equals C squared. And then we're going to plug in 8 as A, so it'll be 8 to the second power plus 6 to the second power equals, we have the unknown x squared there. So now our next step is to evaluate what's x squared. X squared is, 8. 8 squared is 8 times 8, which is 64, plus 6 times 6, which is 36, equals x squared. Okay, since the numbers are on the same side of the equation together, we're going to go ahead and add them together. So 64 plus 36 is 100, equals x squared. And then how do we get rid of the x squared? What's the opposite of x squaring? Is going to be to square root both sides. So we're going to square root the right side and square root the left side. Square root of 100 is what number times itself is 100, and that will equal 10. So our hypotenuse is equal to 10. I always like to rewrite it that our side length, AB, that we solved for is 10 as our final answer. Okay, so that was a question where we were finding the hypotenuse, but let's look at an example where we're not finding the hypotenuse. So for example number 2, we've got given right triangle below, determine the value of x rounded to the nearest tenth. So now this time our answer is not going to be a whole number. So first things first, let's find our hypotenuse. So our 90-degree angle points to the 13.3, which is your C. So then that means that the other sides are A and B. Now it doesn't matter which one you label A or B. It can be that X was B and 7.9 was A, because you're just going to be putting them on the same side of the equation together and then adding them together. So it doesn't matter which way or order you do that. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite my formula. So A squared, plus B squared equals C squared. And then I'm going to go ahead and plug in X here, plus 7.9 squared equals 13.3 squared. Okay, so now just something to note off to the side that's pretty important is that you are not always finding the hypotenuse. So you are not always solving for C. So there's going to be a different method when you're asked to find the A or the B. So when I look at the problem here, I see that the x squared is on the left side of the equation with the 7.9 squared. So let's go ahead and evaluate what 7.9 squared first is 62.41. Again, that's 7.9 times 7.9 equals 13 squared is 176.89. Okay, so now if I look at my equation, in order to get x squared by itself, I have to subtract, in this case, the 62.41 to get x by itself. Okay, so those cancel out. Now we bring down our x squared, and when we subtract, we get 114.48. And then again, we've got to get rid of this squared, so we're going to square root both sides. So we end up with x is equal to, when you throw that right into your calculator, not expecting you to know how to do that in your head, is 10.6995. And we're going to look at what our rounding rule is. Round to the nearest tenth. So our tenth place is the 6. So we're going to look to the number after it, which is a 9, and we're going to rewrite this as x equals 10 point. Well, the 6 gets bumped up by the 9, so it's 10.7 is our final answer there. Okay, so when you're finding a leg, you're not going to be adding, you're going to be subtracting. Okay, so maybe that's important to write down too. Finding A or B. Means you're going to subtract. But when you're finding the hypotenuse, you're just going to be adding. Okay, so go ahead and flip on over to the next side. And here on our next page, we have to first go ahead and read through. It's one of those triangles with the altitude drawn in, and then there's those 3 right triangles, the small, the big, and the medium size. So go ahead and label all of your side lengths. QS is 5.7. RS is 14.3. So that means from here all the way to here is 14.3. And then QT is 5.1. So now what is our question asking us? It's saying determine the length of QR. So we're finding this length over here. And so we need to round it to the nearest tenth at the end. Here we need to take a step back and look at those 3 right triangles. Do we know 2 out of the 3 sides of any of the 3 right triangles? So I'm looking at this, and I'm going to take a look at the bigger outside right triangle. So do you see how if I go from Q to R to S and look at the big outside right triangle, we have a, so if I redraw it, 90-degree angle box there. I got the X here. This is R, Q, S, and 14.3 goes here, and 5.7 up at the top. So do you see how we have, we know 2 sides of the right triangle, and we're asked to find the third. So here we can use a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Because we know the 2 sides. So we have to first find our hypotenuse. So our right angle points to the hypotenuse, which is C, and then the other 2 sides are A or B, depending on which way you want to label them. So go ahead and start by rewriting your formula. A squared plus b squared equals c squared. So I'm going to plug in x for A. So as I'm doing this, think to yourself, are we finding a hypotenuse or are we finding a leg? And in this case, we are finding a leg, which means we're going to be subtracting eventually, not adding the 2 sides together. So what's 5.7 squared is going to be 32.49. 14.3 squared is 204.9. 0.49. Okay, and then at this point we're solving for x, so I'm going to go ahead and subtract to start to isolate x. So subtract your 32.49 from both sides. Those cancel out. We get x squared is equal to 172. And then square root, we end up with x is equal to 13. If we plug that into our calculator, 13.1148. And again, nearest tenths place is the number directly after the decimal. So we're going to look at the 1 right after it. That 1 is going to keep our 13.1 the same. So we're going to get that the length of QR, which is our end goal here, from Q to R is equal to 13.1. Okay, all right. So the next example, take a moment, pause the video, I'm going to pause the video, label all the sides, so go ahead and pause. Okay, so once you have everything labeled and determined your length of CD to be x, what we need to do here on this picture is take a look and see if we know 2 out of the 3 sides of any of these right triangles. So first thing I'm going to do is highlight this side length CD because we know we're going to have to use a triangle that involves length CD. So length CD is a part of this medium-sized triangle here. It could also be a side of the smaller triangle off to the right. So we have to decide which one do we know more information about. Well, right now, if you look at the green triangle, we know that the hypotenuse here would be that 13.1. So we got 13.1 here. We know we're finding this side. All we would need is from A to D. Well, you see how we're given the 15.8 is from here all the way over? And then this little piece here is 5.2. So if I take 15.8 and subtract off 5.2, that will give me the remaining distance from A to D. So when I subtract off, I end up with 10.6. And this is the length of AD. So from here to here is 10.6. The reason why I did that is because now if you look at the green triangle, we know 2 out of the 3 sides of the big green right, or the medium-sized green right triangle, so now we can separate and redraw that over here. So I'll redraw it here. We've got the right angle there, and then we've got x here, 13.1 here, and 10.6 down at the bottom. Okay, so once we have that labeled, now we can go ahead and figure out what's our A, our B, and our C, the right angle box. Why don't you guys try to find the missing side here, so find x on your own. So pause the video and try on your own now. So hit pause, go. Okay, so when I rewrite my Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Got C here, I've got A there, and I've got B there. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in E. You could have plugged in 10.6 for either A or B. And then 13.1 squared over there. So when I square 10.6, you could even do it like this. So you could do minus 10.6 squared. Those cancel out and do minus 10.6 squared. Put this whole side right into your calculator, and that'll kind of save you some steps of individually squaring them. So when you subtract, your answer is automatically going to give you 59.25. So that will all go into your calculator as one step. And then square root both sides. And we end up with x equals 7.697. And rounding to the nearest tenth, we're going to look at the 6, which is getting bumped up by the 7 after it. So we're going to get that x is equal to 7.7. And our length of CD, which is our altitude there, CD, we're just going to rewrite it as 7.7. All right, so go ahead and write your conclusion. Try some practice problems.